makes a great email newsletter. But before we talk about what makes a great email newsletter, I think we need to talk about the different types of email newsletters. And then we'll talk a little bit about the characteristics of each. So if you want to break down some of the most common email newsletters out there, I guess we would start with the true content marketing email newsletter. I know that's one of your favorites, so we'll start with that one.
Yeah, I mean, and so what is that, right? It's where you're really trying to educate someone, not trying to sell something necessarily off the front end. So it's really an informative type newsletter about, hopefully something you're interested in.
And we have an example of that actually from, who was it? Your house inspector?
Yeah. So my house inspector actually, and you think of a home inspector as, a pretty small business. Usually it's a handful of people, but he actually provides real content marketing information in his newsletter. And it's always stuff like, obviously his audience is homeowners, right? So it's people or he's inspected a house for. And what's really interesting about his stuff, it's things like how to select a garage door for your house, because he knows people are going to be doing maintenance on homes they've purchased. So it's always really, but he's not selling anything. His job is a home inspector, right? He's staying in front of you with real articles that will help you get something done. So that way you'll remember him when maybe the next time you move, or, if Nicolette's buying a home and I'm like, oh, you know what, you should use this guy to inspect your house because he's staying in front of me. So he's giving me helpful information, for what I'm doing, working on my house or, purchasing a product for my house, but he's giving me helpful information about that, and he's staying in front of me, because how often do you buy a house? I think the average American moves every 5 years or something like that.
All right. So if you want to look at another form of true content marketing, you brought up Etsy earlier, and Etsy does this pretty well too, right? And I'm going to reference the example you sent me earlier, 3 ways to create your own summer camp. So in that newsletter, right? In that newsletter, there are the 3 ways, right? It talks about, sunscreen first, but then it talks about, getting decked out, choosing your own adventure, always be crafting. And each of those things links to something on Etsy, another article. And in that article, there are products.
Yeah, what's really cool about the way they integrate stuff that is being sold on Etsy, I mean, one, you got to click on it to read the full article, right? And you hit the site. But what they do is, I'm sure most people know what Etsy is, but if you don't, it's where people sell handmade items. And what's really interesting about it is in those articles, they take items that are being sold in various stores on Etsy, and they incorporate these really nice images that the stores have put in the image, and they're not necessarily like pushing a product, but in this article, they're talking about like one of the things is crafting, right? Or I think you said, and they show like, a watercolor palette and things like that, where you're clicking on, and then you're actually going and looking at those products in those stores or products similar to those. So they're showing clothing, they're showing all the things, and they're showing these nice images, but they're not going, here's this watercolor palette and it's $49.99. Do you know what I mean? They're just literally showing it. You click on it and like, wow, this is really cool. Let me get this. This would be a great project for summer. So,
well, to that point, here, this is $49.99. Get this. Let's talk about the next type of newsletter, just products, right? And this is, and I'm going to pull up my inbox because I hate these emails and I don't open them. So Forever 21, feeling lucky? We have a deal for you. No, thank you. The Vitamin Shop, clock's ticking on $25 off. Yeah, I'm not really looking for any vitamins, and so, Groupon, 61% off HelloFresh. Not interested right now. Express, so these are just products. You open it and it's just products. If I'm not looking for something, I'm really not.
Well, and if you noticed, retailers, right, or services like Groupon, what they're doing is they're bombarding the user with emails. And I'll use Pure One, right, as an example right now. Pure One's going out of business, and I'm on their mailing list. And guess what? They've been bombarding me, but I was buying chairs. So guess what happened? And actually, as we just spoke, did you hear that thing? That was Wayfair coming in on an email.
Hey, you just bought chairs from Pier 1. Now buy them from us.
Exactly. So my point is, unless you're actually looking at, like, product stuff has to be so timely to what that user is purchasing then and there, that that's the only time it's really useful. You know, I mean, most people aren't going, oh, look, you know what, I need this at that second. I don't know what you mentioned from Groupon or whatever, HelloFresh or something, right? You know, so if you don't need it at that time and place, you sort of ignore that email. You know, and most people are not going back to it 3 weeks later and go, oh yeah, I remember that email from, you know, Groupon or from this store, and there was a sale. Like, it just doesn't work that way.
So there are times, and I will say this, and maybe I'm an exception to a rule, but if I remember seeing something, a deal, and then maybe a couple of weeks later I do need something from that store, I'll go back and I'll check my email and see if any new emails came through with a coupon or percentage off. But, you know, when I first received that email, I'm not like, oh my goodness, I got to get this deal right now. You know, I'm not going to impulsively buy things because, you know, there's a clearance.
Well, and, you know, and a good example of, I guess you could say maybe this is someone that does it well, because you see this all the time. If you go to Michael's, which is like another arts and crafts type store, you'll see people online always going, hold on, let me get my Michael's coupon. And they're looking at the coupon that was emailed to them in their phone. So, you know, I mean, so obviously that works for people to go back and look at those emails. So, you know, I'd be interested what their stats are on that sort of retention, like how many times a user looks at that email.
Right.
Because I'm guessing with things like that, where it's a coupon that's maybe good for a week or 2 weeks, I don't know how long these coupons are good for, that users would go back to it and look for the newest one.
I think that's a good point. When you're talking about stores that you frequent regularly, so maybe someone's really into crafting and they're constantly at Michael's, or, you know, I'm thinking about Target. I love Target, right? I'm there every week, and Target sends out their, you know, weekly deals. That's an email I'll open when I'm going to the store. I know they've sent it to me. I'll take a look at it. Let me see if there's anything that I should be getting this week or any, you know, I know there's an app, but I don't.
Yeah, I think one of the funniest things about Target stuff with the app, and even, I don't know if they do this via email, but you start talking about Target, like most of us go to Target a lot, right? At this point, I think the funniest is, you know, everyone's, you know, if you go to Target, you usually spend like money, and then 2 days later you're there again,
spending.
right? I think the funniest part about the app, and I know this is a little off the newsletter, and I don't know if they send this via newsletter, they may, but they try to make me feel good about what I spent there, being like, you saved $3 and
they do that like, at the bottom of the receipt.
Right? No, but they actually send, it's in my app, and it like tries to make me feel better about the money I just spent there. Like, you saved 32 cents, way to go. And I'm like, okay, thanks. You know, even though I cost $100 for me to save 32 cents, but I guess I'm okay with that. But you get it's fun, but it's funny the logic that goes in there, because I'm sure that's what they're thinking. Like, hey, it's retention, right? You know, it's the retention of the user. So.
Right. I'm going to make your, you know, negative experience a positive one by telling you you saved money instead of lost $100 today.
Right. Instead of you bought stuff you probably didn't need because you brought your daughters with you, and that $15 item turned into a $50 item because they saw some toys along the way.
Yeah. All right. So the next type of newsletter I want to talk about is, let's talk about the news brief, you know, roundup kind of article. And we do these a lot for our sites, right? A weekly or bi-week, you know, is it bi-weekly? I don't know. No,
it's every 2 weeks.
A week. So. I can never get that right.
Yeah.
Newsletter that rounds up, you know, the latest content on the site, right? So we do that, you know, with our site, we design it, you know, there's other, you know, media sites we work with that send out these newsletters, and they round up all the content from the week or the top picks, and send them out to the audience. And that's, I mean, it's just straight up content, right? I give you the example, the New York Times does a daily briefing. And so I just have to look in the email to see what's going on instead of going to the New York Times site, which I don't want to do. So I'll just scroll through the email and see, all right, what's going on, which I don't always open it, but it's good. It has everything in there. It's a nice little roundup. So that's another type of newsletter.
Yeah. And I think those are useful if you're And the New York Times is more general, right? But I think, you mentioned sites. And say, e-design it, right? That's a site for, electronics and engineering and things like that. But if you're into that, if that's where you're into, or you're using to do your job, those weekly roundups work really well. But it's a very, distinct audience is what I should say. And I think what works really well on things like, the New York Times also, like if you're interested in certain types of news and they're using, recommendation engines to actually generate some of those newsletters, and they're using those type of things, what happens is I think they become more valuable to the end user, if they know what you're interested in.
Right. So, you talked about recommendations. And so I think that's a good segue there. The recommendation newsletter. So, talk about that a little bit.
Right. So, when it's targeted towards you, like, let's use the, e-design example, right? If I'm an engineer and I'm into aerospace, so I'm into, spaceships and planes and things like that, if I'm getting information that's targeted towards that, if I'm able to get those type of things, what happens is it becomes more useful. It doesn't mean that the other stuff's not useful, right? The more general engineering stuff. But if it's more targeted towards me, I probably am going to have a better propensity to use it. Now, we've done this before where we've worked on a lot of video projects, and we look at, users who have a tendency to engage in, video, right? They're more likely to open a video type newsletter or a very heavily image newsletter than if you just sent them, more of just like a traditional sort of like that roundup we talked about with some, static image and some copy. If they know they're going to be able to watch video, it's going to be more propensity. So anytime you have data that you could use to deliver users more of what they're interested in, it is going to be, you're going to have better click-through rates. You're going to have better interactivity. If they have a propensity to do something, and you have that data and you have their permissioning, right, to do that, which becomes a huge thing, then it's always great to do that if you can.
And Netflix does this to me all the time. You watch this, you might like our newest release, and I get that. I'm like, all right, maybe they know me, because I feel like Netflix knows me, unless my mom or my dad or my sister is using my Netflix, and then I get all kinds of weird crap.
What's funny is it's always like that, because iTunes used to be like that. Like, people didn't have a separate iTunes account, but like my kids would have their music on my iTunes account and it would give me recommendations. And I was like, where is it coming from? Right. But I think it's the same thing. Like, if you have whatever it is, Amazon Prime, and people are sharing it, your son's probably watching kids stuff the way my daughters are. And some of the recommendations are then cartoons mixed in with this. And sometimes it's funny too, because if your kids have ever used your device, even like your iPad, right. And then
YouTube is my favorite.
Right. They'll be like, on YouTube, they'll be like, why are there videos on fixing cars? Do you know what I mean? And you're like,
because it's my account, children.
It's my account. Exactly. Or they'll start watching some cartoon in it, and all of a sudden, like, every other video that's recommended for you is cartoons. And it takes a while to get out of the system. If you ever noticed, like, it takes a while to go away. It takes a few days of them not using it again. But most services are using recommendations, whether they're streaming TV or they're, things like YouTube, or they're even websites to purchase things. And there are a lot of newsletters that actually use the user's data on the site to create custom newsletters that are recommended. So
that's the recommended newsletter. All right, here's the other newsletter that I want to talk about. So this is, and I know you're not in love with this newsletter, right? But the newsletter that's an email, right? And I think there's two types of these. There's one, and I mentioned it earlier, where, it's not like someone's writing me an email, right? But, they try to personalize it with my name, but, but what I like about it, and it's probably one of the very, very few that I've seen that does it right, is, it's an email. It's just, hey, this happened, and, this is what happened, believe it or not, I did it this way, but I was wrong. And you know what, check it out. I posted a video on Instagram, check out, here are my tips, and so not trying to sell me anything, which leads to the second version of that, is where, and I get these a lot, where they try to act like they're sending me an email, but it's just hello, period. And then they say, here's your 50% off code, you know, we heard you need this, and, you know, you want to get whatever, more subscribers, get this 50% off code. Like, I don't want to buy your shit. You know, don't come to me and pretend to be my friend and then try to sell me something. I hate that. So there are two ways, but that's the email style.
Right. And I, you know, I think, I guess maybe I'm a little more jaded with the email style newsletter, because I feel like anytime it's like, hey, Brian, I found this new tip, you know, and here's what it is. Even if there's like a content marketing aspect to it, right? Like, it's trying to educate you. And I know content marketing is doing it, but to me, somehow it's like, even when you see emails like from Verizon, let's say, right? And a lot of people have Verizon. It comes from a person at Verizon. That person's not really sending me that email. Right. You know what I mean? Does
it feel cheap?
Exactly. But
right.
They know for some reason, if they put some fake name that it's from Verizon, that I'm more likely to open it. But I just feel like you're already trying to trick me from the onset to opening it. But I mean, maybe that's us jaded as you know, doing some of this stuff, right? Being marketers. But I think I have a harder time swallowing those, because I feel like I'm being set up from the onset. Do you know what I mean? Than any of the other ones, you know?
Getting over on Brian, that's it.
Yeah. I don't know. It doesn't work on me. I mean, I'm sure they work because people send them. So
right. It's true. So the last type of newsletter I want to talk about was the retention newsletter. And I like the example of Canva. And so, you know, if you've been watching, you know, I love Trello. I also love Canva. And Canva is one of my favorite tools to create, you know, social media stuff and all kinds of design stuff. But I'm already a customer, right? I mean, I'm already paying for the premium version, and they send me emails that inspire me. And that's the type of, you know, retention. You know, I get different templates, and I get, I don't know, I get design inspiration for, you know, Facebook or Instagram stories, or, you know, and they give me helpful tips for even using their tool, right? New features come out. Oh, here, did you know you could do this too? No, I didn't. Tell me. I want to do that too, you know? So they keep me opening them, because I'm constantly looking to, you know, evolve whatever I'm doing.
Yeah. And another good example of that is actually what Adobe does. Adobe does, you know, very similar, you know, tool sets for design, but they actually do the same thing. They're always sending like, here's some stuff you can do in Photoshop, or here's stuff you need to know. Now, what's interesting, and, you know, I wonder how, and it probably does, so I'm sort of answering my own question, but any sort of subscription service, right? Does it need a lot more retention in it? Right? Do you need to do a lot more retention emails for a subscription service, because that company or that person will be renewing at the end of the year, you know, or whatever their term is. So do you need to stay in front of them and prove value, even if it's a tool they use all the time? And maybe they, you know, maybe with subscription services, the more you use the tool, right? So they're getting used to use the tool, the less likely you're going to, you know, not renew your subscription at the end of the year.
Yeah. Yep, that's true. That's true. You know, and so those are the types of emails. Now, I think I just want to touch on briefly some of the characteristics of those emails. You know, I know we talked about the informative, the content marketing email that is informative, but we also need to remember that they're not only providing useful information, it's useful and interesting. And you brought this point up earlier. You know, you could have useful information, but if you're not interested in it, it's pointless, you know, it's useless. So that, I think that content marketing email is informative, but useful and interesting, and they have to kind of work together.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other characteristic of a good email, you know, is it's inspiring. And we talked about that with Canva. So you're getting inspiration for, you know, in this case, it's work related, but inspiration for whatever it is to keep, you know, your creativity going, or just to kind of, you know, zone out a little bit, whatever it might be, you're being inspired to do something.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, honestly, isn't that the purpose of all newsletters, right? To cause inspiration to act or some action, right? So, you know, I think foundationally, right, that should be something all newsletters aspire to be,
Sure.
in many ways.
I think the other thing when we talk about, for example, the Etsy, I'll bring that up, 3 ways to create your own summer camp. And I love emails, I love subject line. I love headlines with numbers in them, right? I'm a big listicle fan, but subject lines that tell me that there are X ways or things or something like that, I'm inclined to open. I really am. And I'll bring up the example I was reading earlier. I didn't even know what Yay Maker was. And I was like, what is this? But it was top 5 paintings of 2020.
Right.
I was interested in opening it. I don't even remember what I subscribed to, but I'll check out the top 5 paintings of 2020. I was interested. So I think anything that you can do to kind of incorporate a concise amount of things in a newsletter and I think that's a good idea as well.
Well, I think people also, when you see a list, right, okay, I'm going to get a bulk of information and it's going to be quick. It's not going to be some long drawn out thing. I'm going to see 1, 2, 3, 4, and those are going to give me my action items, right? Or the things I need to do. So I agree. I think lists are really good in terms of if you're putting a newsletter together.
Mm-hmm. And, if you're going to do a roundup, right? If you're going to do a roundup, I think it really depends. The New York Times sticks all of the information in the email, but there are other emails that link people off to that website, and I think it depends what your goal is, right? Are you trying to drive traffic? Are you, what is the purpose? The New York Times has links in there along the way, but they give you a good chunk of information that you really don't need to. So if you really want to drive people to your site, that's the way to go about that. Not to include the full item in the body of the email. So,
and I think that's a good point. So there are newsletters that incorporate, here's all the content, and then there are newsletters that they're snippets, right? And you're driving them to the site. And I think depending on what your business is and what you are is and what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, is how you distinguish some of those things. Because sometimes it is very valuable to put the whole article in there. For instance, a good example is with the content marketing with the inspector is basically everything is in there. I'm not going to his site to go buy a product, right? Like he just needs to stay in front of me. Whereas Etsy, I need to go there. They're both doing a really great job at content marketing, but I need to go there to purchase the product. So I need to drive them, to there. So I think depending on your goal is really whether you encompass the entire email or you go, okay, what do I need to do? What is my goal? Is it to get someone to page you? Is it to get, from a media organization? Is it to get someone to buy a product? I need to send them somewhere to do that.
Mm-hmm. Now, if we look at some of those product emails, the last thing I'd like to talk about is kind of what those product emails could do differently to get me to actually open them or you. We talk about if you don't need it, right? So if you don't need it, it's useless, right?
If it's just like, here's a list of things we have on sale. If I don't need one of those things and it doesn't catch my eye from the onset, like I'm buying a chair, if it doesn't catch your eye from the onset, you sort of just, go straight in your trash,
But what if you didn't need a chair, right? And Pier 1 sent you an email about, I don't know, keeping your floor clean in the summer, right? Or, or dropping barbecue sauce on your outdoor furniture or something like that, something timely. And it was more about that. You might open it, even if you didn't need a chair.
Well, I think that's the point of like the Etsy one, right? It's sort of even, but if you're talking about, so it's really using content marketing to sell product, right? It's really going, how do you go and you tell an interesting story that's timely, right? That's available to many people. Like for instance, here, let's use the Pier 1, one. You could talk about couch cushions, right? And you could say how to avoid summer stains on your outdoor furniture. And then, here, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then when you click it, you go, okay, here's some, show the nice pictures of the outdoor furniture cushions. And you can say, okay, these ones are stain resistant. These are, do you know what I mean? When people click on those nice images, go, wow, that's a nice looking cushion. They may go, oh, okay, that one's stain resistant also. And here's what I need. Cause that's what happened. Cause I got, 57 children and they spilled ketchup all over my outdoor furniture, so.
Right. And, I'm barbecuing anyway,
right.
So
I'm barbecuing. I hate my family. They ruined my stuff.
So, you know, I think drawing on the good stuff that companies like Etsy are doing and incorporating products into your content is probably more effective than here are 35 products in an email, click on one and we want you to buy it right now. You know,
and I'm sure there's a certain part of their user base that are just like such, you know, fans, right? I'm such a fan of, you know, pick a store, Wayfair.
Well, think about sneakers, right? Think of, you know, if someone loves sneakers, and there are people, I live with one who loves sneakers and will open any sneaker, you know, Nike email, any Foot Locker email that is sent, you know, just because he wants to see what's new, what's there, you know. And there are fans who will buy even if they don't need.
Right. And those are, and those are the people too that probably it's very effective with like, hey, it's 80% off.
Yeah.
You know, and that's retention, you know, right? So, or it just may be, you know, they may not be a customer you know of, but it's that sort of retention piece. It's like the people that are always buying. If you need to up sales, a great way to do that is just offer sale to your current customers, because what's going to happen is they already know your product. It's an easy sell. They don't have to go learn about your product. They don't have to read reviews. Usually they go, okay, I'm Nike. I'm a size 10 in Nike. And these are my favorite, you know, style of running shoes. And now I could get the, you know, blue ones for 80% off.
Yep. So those are some good emails, right? And those are some of the characteristics of those great emails. Now, what we want to know is, you know, what are your favorite emails? What emails do you hate? And what else should we be including in our email newsletters?
And make sure you subscribe.